share my screen so that we can see where you are. So if we aren't too many people, how about a quick round of introductions? Like 10-second intro, name, location, and maybe one area or one thing that you're really interested in working on. Do you like to start, Sachin? Kick us off.
Yeah, Rakesh. So my name is Sachin. I'm based in India. From last year, the best part is how I know Rakesh. If you remember, Rakesh, you started your Berlin. I am the first. So we are 5-6 people, and from there, you can say the workshop thinking got started, and from that first day, from till date, I am attached to the workshop team, or you can say I met Robert, I met Sabrina, and all these guys. After first talking to you, and then my story started from you to get into the workshop. Thank you very much, and giving me which way to go. And I'm based in India. I'm a UX manager at OLX. I am looking for OLX Auto right now. That is.
Thank you. Thanks for kicking us off. How about you, Roxanne? Would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, everyone from the Netherlands. Yeah, I'm studying here, so I'm here for 3 years. I'm originally from Romania, and I'm very interested in design thinking and mainly about how to connect all its stages into a more natural, fluid process. So when I saw this workshop on LinkedIn, and I was like, I want to try it out. I want to see what Rakesh has to say about it. So hi everyone.
Very happy to have you, Roxana. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next? There's two Roxanas here, Roxana and Roxanne. Maybe you want to do us the honors, Roxanne?
Yes, I can do it, which does not happen very often, actually.
Okay.
So I'm also in Berlin, and at the moment I'm doing a lot of user research for a company builder. Okay. So I was just curious.
Okay, great. Happy to have you and your curiosity. Always welcome. Would you like to go next, Carolyn?
Yes. Hi, it's nice meeting you. My name is Carolyn. I live in Hamburg, and right now I work as a brand consultant and will start working as a UX strategist from July on. So I'm curious as well.
Great. From branding to UX strategy. That's a very nice bridge. Good to hear that. Thank you. Welcome also. Julia, would you like to introduce yourself maybe?
Yes, I'm Julia. I'm currently based in Augsburg in Germany. I'm an independent strategy and design thinking facilitator, but I'm not that experienced in the classic design sprint that you're doing, like the Google format. Mm-hmm. And I saw your posting in the GVDS where I'm currently participating.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I thought, okay, I'm happy to join and learn from you. And I've met Sabrina before, so it's
okay.
Funny.
Small world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the GVDS is a very nice community. It's the Global Virtual Design Sprint community.
Yeah.
And that's where I also got to meet a lot of other practitioners. And that was really a place where I learned so much. And that's one thriving community. That's always a cool place to be in. Great. Katharina, would you like to introduce yourself quickly, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Katharina. I'm based in Stuttgart and I'm a UX designer and I'm a self-taught design sprinter. So I facilitated a couple of them already with my team, but I'm curious to hear more and hear insights and tips. Okay. And let's see, childcare is closed, so I don't know how long my son sleeps. So
okay. Fingers crossed on that. Hey, Thomas, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So I'm Thomas. I'm based in Düsseldorf, and I work in a bank on building banking apps.
Nice.
And I'm quite curious to learn in which way I can use some design thinking techniques for my daily work.
Perfect. I mean, I like the spectrum that we have today and different cities and different areas of work. Lovely. Maria, would you like to go next?
Hello, of course. So I'm Maria, like I'm located in Germany, in Potsdam. It's not far away from Berlin. I am like from quality perspective background, and yeah, I'm interested in design sprints to get to know regarding how QAs can collaborate with other like part of team with researchers, designers, like product people, and how like we can like bring quality on this like early stage even.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Very happy to have you. Thank you for
Yeah,
joining us.
of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. Sorry for the delay.
No problem.
I have some problems with my account. I don't know, it's not always when I try to join Zoom, join with another account, not with my private.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'm Paula. I'm based in Munich. I'm actually process engineer, entrepreneur, and I guess you were saying why you are interested in design sprints, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like during my journey in my company, I made some mistakes, like working for a long time for a product and then realized, okay, it's not what the customer wanted. So I start using design thinking and in a startup. And once then I met an agency and they recommend design sprint. And we did it once and I like it when we were pivoting, like we produce natural ingredients for cosmetics.
Cool.
But we also have a business unit to produce like the final product, like the cream.
Hey, great.
So that's why when they recommended and I really like it and I saw, okay, it's actually what you really need, because I see it's like you have all the things like the customer centricity, but also the validation at the end.
Yes.
But I'm not a facilitator. I have read the book and I would like to learn more.
Okay,
So
great.
that's
No, that's very nice. Thank you for sharing that information. It's very good to hear which sectors people are also working in. Abhinav, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, this is Abhinav. I'm based out of New Delhi as a UX designer. I'm currently associated with a global fintech firm called PayPal, and I got here for the GVDS program only. And some of you I may have met, Rakesh, Sachin, Yulia, others. It's good to say hi to all.
Great. Wonderful to have you, Abhinav. Karen?
Hi, yes, I'm Karen. I'm calling from Bangkok, and I'm interested in learning more about the methodology. Like Roxana, I would like to know a bit more about your way of doing the design sprints.
Perfect.
And I would probably use the methodology or not in the workshops and trainings that I'm involved in. So
okay, great.
For now, I don't have experience with that.
That's okay, not a problem. Yash, Yash is from my team at Sprint Doctor. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself, Yash?
Hello guys, my name is Yash. I'm working with Rakesh at the moment. My profile is somewhere in digital communication, content creation, and stuff like that. And I'm currently doing my master's in public policy from Berlin. I'm situated here, and I'm helping Rakesh with this workshop today. Good to meet you guys.
Thanks. Nice. It's always nice to have a small group of people. So let's jump straight into the Miro board and see what we have in store for today. So I'll just bring everyone here and let me share the link again in chat in case someone joined us later. So the Miro board is in the chat again. So today's agenda is really about problem framing. We'll also take a very quick look at the sprints. Most of you know what it is, but I'll still would like to do a very short intro. And we'll also try out problem framing exercise. We'll look at all other tools that are needed. And at 4 o'clock, Sabrina will join us to share her experience of problem framing. And then we'll close and look at the next steps. And the next session next Friday is going to be all about understanding. So it's about the whole mapping and targeting and all the exercises that go under the first day, more or less, of the sprint. That's what we'll be looking at next Friday. So without much ado, let's go across. So I'll just share my screen again in case you're not able to see it. I want to start with what's called the idea space. So usually when we have ideas, at least I see three very important components to that. You have the user, then you have the problem itself, and then you have the solution for the problem. So all these three elements come together in order to get you the full idea. So it's always good to see them in these three separate corners. That way you'll also ask yourself, hey, do I really know who the user is? What's a way of finding that out? What's a way of validating that? Do I really know what the problem is? That's something that needs to be validated. And do I really understand if this is the solution that makes sense for the problem and the user? So this is a very simple example that I thought would be interesting to take. I'm missing an icon here. So let's imagine we have a user as a traveler, and the problem that she's facing is it's really frustrating to book flights on a phone because the website's shitty or it's not really done well. And she's actually wishing for something that would really help her solve this problem. So let's try to jump right in. And I'd love to encourage all of you to take a shot at writing a problem statement for this user. How would you describe the problem that this user is going through? So feel free to pick a post-it and start writing in there. So our user is a traveler. There's frustration because of booking flights on the phone because it really takes a lot of time. She's wishing for a nice solution for that. But how would you describe the problem? So what is the problem statement according to you? So in the sprint world, doing is the best form of thinking. So I'd love to encourage you to pick up a post-it, try your hand at writing a statement. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not trying to, it's not about right or wrong. Try your hand at it. I know this is like jumping a bit into cold waters, but that's what makes it exciting. And let's see what comes out. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Time's up. And very interesting to see all those responses. Already see also someone using the how might we construct. Very good. Someone wants to get a cheap flight just using mobile. Yeah, that's a very nice, simple statement. No simplification in the process. The website to book flights is not mobile responsive. Users not happy with the mobile touch point about finding the right flight times, comparing prices. Yeah, very nice. So really cool. I love the way everyone is approaching it, but do you also realize that there are multiple perspectives here? And every one of you is coming at it from your own perspective of saying, okay, this could be the problem. So this is the part which is very, very challenging in a sprint. Usually on the first day of a sprint in the understand phase, you also have a lot of exercises that help you really flesh out the problem. But what happens in most cases is that you go into this first day assuming that you will be able to flesh out the problem, but it doesn't happen usually all the time. So there are times when it gets a lot more confusing and the team is not able to really narrow it down and say, okay, I really know what the exact problem is. So that's the reason we do a little bit of problem framing at least a week or two before the actual sprint begins. So again, let me go into a quick introduction to the sprint now at this point to tell you where the problem framing comes in. So you all know the book and what's the sprint. It's a structured process for solving business questions or problems. And the classic version has 5 days with one big goal for each day. So in the first day where you say, start with the mapping, ask experts, target the certain area that you're going to work on, you will see that there is a good understanding of the problem. But as I said, this doesn't happen all the time. So your problem framing comes before that. So depending on how much time you have, you can either do this, say, a day or two before in a very quick and dirty way, or if you have enough time to plan, you can do this at least a week or two before. And the design sprint can be an emotional ride, but it's also a lot of fun. So it's good to have a heads up there. And let's now look at the reasons or the benefits for doing this problem framing. So these are the 3 questions you're looking at. So what are the jobs to be done? What are we trying to actually solve? What is the problem that this product is going to solve? And what is the user's motivation? So you have the problem context, you have the problem context, then you have the user's context or the business context also, you can even see that. So these are the aspects you need to look at in order to understand what the real problem is. And what are the benefits of really nailing down this problem? You can be sure before you go into the sprint that you're really defining the right challenge and you're all working on the right thing. You can get all your stakeholders on the same page. You can adapt your team depending on the challenge. Sometimes the challenge might need a frontline salesperson if you define it correctly. Sometimes it might need a researcher. And if you don't do the problem framing before, you may not have the right person in the team afterwards. And last of all, you get a chance to understand your users a little bit in a deeper sense. Sometimes there might be more than one user. A lot of you UX people would know that. Sometimes there's a buyer persona, sometimes there's also the end user persona. So you need to understand whom you're actually solving the sprint for. So that was a quick jump into cold waters about what the problem statement is. Now, let's take a look at why problem framing is really important. Any questions at this point? How's everyone feeling? Okay. I'll take that as a good indication. I'll again share my screen. So this is a video from one of Google's annual gatherings for the sprint conference. And this talks about, you have a couple of people who have come together there. They talk about how problem framing is important. And it's also made by friends from the Design Sprint Academy. So let's take a look at that.
My name is Blaise Haye. I work at Nike and I'm a product manager.
I'm Alexandra. I work for Audible. I'm a senior UX design manager.
My name is Bill Bangs. I work for Boeing Global Services, based out of Denver, Colorado, for the product design group.
I'm Kai Haley. I lead design relations team at Google. I'm also one of the core leads of our Google Sprint Master Academy. We've all read the Google Spread book on my team, and we tried to implement it, and we sort of glossed over the problem framing.
Without understanding what the problem is, sometimes it works really well. Other times we have the wrong stakeholders, and we have the wrong problem defined, and so we just miss the mark.
Usually with contract out to agencies to do large projects, we wouldn't know if they were going to sink or fail until they launched. We looked inwards and started building our own teams to deliver those same things, but we're repeating the same mistakes.
Types of challenges we might take on usually are around business goals, like something like conversions or engagement or acquisition. But there's a lot of nuance in there. We have a lot of different stakeholders, and so getting alignment and getting agreed on what is the root cause of the problem, not just the symptoms, is important for us.
This is going to help as a pre-sprint activity, is to be able to do these types of workshops.
This would allow us to evaluate potential ideas and problems a lot sooner and actually have more confidence in the solutions we deliver.
Any tools that we have for making it more efficient and faster will be really helpful. So I'm very focused on getting that part right.
So there you go. That was it. Pretty simple, but very effective explanation about why the sprints or why the problem framing is super important. And as you saw, it really eliminates a lot of the risk of getting it right much earlier than jumping into the sprint and later realizing that, oh, we may not actually be working on the actual problems. And that's actually happened to me a couple of times. So it can be a little bit scary then. So now that you've seen that, what could be some ways of actually framing the problem? Any thoughts from, oh, sorry, the audio was not working in the video. Sorry, Karen. Then I've just shared the video again. Can you take a look? Maybe later. But any thoughts on how to do this problem framing? Has anyone done any form of problem framing? Any ideas or thoughts on that?
Usually do a user research up front, like a couple of qualitative interviews, 5 to 8. Yeah,
yeah, great. Anything else? That's one part of it for sure. User interviews. How do you understand the business context? How do you understand the problem context more?
Talking to the stakeholder and understanding what they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. You can get all the stakeholders into a room and do a mini workshop of sorts.
Yeah.
So what I do usually is, I mean, depending on the scope of the problem, it could either be a whole day of problem framing, or it could just be a 3-hour problem framing session. So it depends on what you're trying to fish out, and yeah, depending on that, you can structure that. Any other ideas on what activities would you use to actually flesh out the problem? How would you arrive at this problem statement? Okay, not too many responses there, no worries. Let me take you through one example of an activity to do exactly that. So it's called the W4 method. I'll again bring you to me on the Miro board. Let me share my screen again. So this is a very simple method. It basically has two big steps. In the first step, you try to understand who has the problem, what exactly is the problem, where does it happen, and why is it important. Once you've done this part, then you jump across and have a clear problem statement format and try to construct your problem statement based on whatever output that came out of the 4 quadrants. So for example, in this case, the problem statement could be, I'm a traveler who is trying to book flights on my phone, but it takes a very long time. What's the reason for that? Because the website is not responsive and doesn't have a mobile version, and this makes me feel frustrated. So this is a simple problem statement that you can construct based on what you find out from the W4 quadrants. So this is just one method. There's a couple of other methods to do this also. And we'll come and try it out in a moment, but let me share quickly a couple of other methods. Another thing that you could do is what's called pain point mapping. So you try to discover or write down all possible problems and classify them under 3 categories. So what are all the expensive problems? What are the time-consuming problems? And what are the redundant and unnecessary problems? So you capture all of them, then you can cluster and prioritize, and you can then try to organize them even in the bullseye and try to understand which are the key problems. You can go one step ahead by even adding a price tag to each of these problems and saying, depending on the price tag, which is my most important problem. So ignore what's here on the post-its. It's just it doesn't really represent a problem statement. There's just some dummy text in there. But that's another way of doing that. So you can actually get super creative with the ways in which you can identify many problems. It's all about bringing these 3 primary elements together, which is the user, the business context, or the context in which the problem finds itself. It need not always be a business problem. And third, the solution, the problem context itself. So the problem user. Okay, so this is hanging. Yeah, no, it's fine. So the problem user and the context in which it finds itself, because when it comes to design sprints, the very classic application is to use it to create new products or services. But you can also apply it in completely new other ways. For example, yesterday I was doing a strategy sprint. So you take the concept of the sprint and apply it to creating a new strategy for a specific arm of an organization. Or you can also use it to create a whole new campaign. Like the other day, we were doing a communication campaign using the sprints. So it depends on where you're applying it. So that was W4 and pain point mapping. There's a third method called constraint storming. So you try to write down multiple versions of the problem. So you could write it from the user's perspective, you could write it from the business perspective, you could write it from a completely other perspective. And then you try to write down what could be all the different constraints that are related to these problems. And then you can use dot voting to, again, cluster, vote, and narrow down which are the most interesting problems to work on. And sometimes there's also a need to just do problem framing or problem landscaping, that I call it also, which is all about surfacing all possible problem statements that you have in a given area. So let's say sometimes you do a problem framing session and you come up with 10 to 20 problems. So sometimes the session is just about that, just finding all those problems, and then knowing that you have this database of problems that you can pick and choose from, and then say, okay, I'm going to pick problem number 10. I'm going to do specific user research maybe for that, and then go into a sprint for that. So that's another way of doing things. So let's try this out. It'll give you a hang of what exactly it is. So I'm sure most of you are dealing with different problems. You're working on different aspects of things. So why don't you jump onto these 4 quadrants and try to answer these questions and see if you can construct a problem statement for yourself. So in the ideal world, you would be writing different options and then you would be voting on it, etc. But since we are such a diverse group, it'll be cool if each one of you can just take 1 or 2 post-its, just write down who was the problem, what is the problem, where it happens and why it's important, and use that along with this format to construct your own problem statement. And then we can see what are the different problem statements that you have constructed. Yeah, should we do that? Great, jump in. So you can either take this problem that we saw, or you can also take your own problem, whichever makes sense for you. So with the who, you're really focusing on the user. So what is this, who is this user? Maybe what could be some interesting facts about this user? You can also include that as a supporting fact. Yeah, good stuff. And what exactly is the problem? So sometimes it's maybe not about booking the flight itself. Maybe it's about something else that this person wants to do. Maybe this is just the first step before really reaching the other problem that our traveler is looking at. And where does it happen could be a literal place. Maybe she's doing it at home where she doesn't have great internet like Berlin, or maybe she's doing it at work. Maybe, yeah, that's a good one that someone's writing in the car, driving to the office. And the 4th quadrant is very interesting. So this is where, why is it really important? So in this why, you can already see 2 aspects to it. So one is the value to the customer. And the second aspect is the value to the business, or whatever context that this person is operating. Great. Nice job, people. Doing well. So let's zoom in to the why is it important and see what you're writing here. Yeah, supporting impulsive people to do some impulsive traveling. Yes. I've always wondered how many people take the blind booking option. Keep the booker happy, fast booking. Yeah. And if you look at it, the whole airline industry, the whole process of doing things is so broken in many places there. Nice, some really nice contexts and situations in between public transport. You have some travelers, yeah, good one. A couple of challenges or problems here. Nice. So if you've done that, try to squeeze that into this format and see if you come up with a nice problem statement in these post-its below. Yeah, some of the first statements coming up. Good stuff. Yeah, each one of you can just choose a row. That way it's easy for you. Nice. I also like that you're coming up with specific device-based users. Good stuff. Let me fill this post-it out. So another big advantage of knowing this problem statement before you jump into the sprint is to also assess the risks and understand, in what scope is your client or your team looking for solutions, what kind of solutions you might be exploring. And again, there it helps to understand if you're going too narrow or you're going too broad, or you're able to sort of hit that sweet spot where you get maximum value out of the sprint. So sometimes even it has happened that I've done a problem framing workshop and we realized that together with the team that it doesn't make sense to run a sprint, that maybe we're missing some information, or we're not aligned about the problem, or we don't agree that this is the problem that we want to solve, or we find out that the problem that the information that we have is not good enough, or we haven't really done enough research to get all that we need. Great, this is really good. Good to see all of you using that construct. It's super simple. Very nice. That's some very good scenarios there. There's a young adult taking care of my plants. It's not understandable enough. Yes, that's exactly my problem. I am a plant killer. And the superintendent in the US using my iPad for meetings. Yeah, very specific one. Lovely. To coordinate a construction site, some functions are not available because the mobile version is too limited. Very good. And you like traveling, but sometimes you don't get the Wi-Fi. And yeah, exactly. When it's this sort of devil in the deep sea situation when you need to book something very urgently, and that's exactly when you don't have good Wi-Fi. Very nice. So how is that? Any questions, thoughts, or insights from that process of constructing a problem statement? Maybe let me just ask Thomas, how was that for you? Because from the banking world, have you done some problem framing or something similar before, or how did you relate to this?
Not really. In many cases, we start working with new features and don't tackle a problem that's already existing with our customers. But nevertheless, I think the idea of asking the W questions will also help in terms of developing new features or new ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say so. it's always good to create some, to again get clarity if those are the real features that you really want, right?
Yeah.
Any other voices on maybe someone who's trying, who's still new to the sprints or?
I have a question, Rakesh.
Sure. Yeah.
So do you usually pick one of those exercises that you showed us, like the one that we did, or the pain point mapping, and then you always ended with this format? I'm trying to. Is that the process, or?
Yeah, so that is one part of the process. So with this, I reach one approximation of the problem. But what we also need to dig into a little bit more detail is the business context and the user context. So I don't really just stop here. So with this, I get a first version of the statement, and I try to improve on it by understanding the business context. So let me share a tool for the business context there. So it's very simple. I look at something like the SWOT analysis of the company or the team or the business, whatever we are trying to do. So strengths, opportunities, threats, weaknesses. So this gives you an idea of the context in which this problem is situated. And another thing that you can do to further fine-tune this would be user discovery tools. Like you could do an empathy map to gain much more information about the user. And also you could do a full user journey map where you go through different phases of what the user is going through and really, again, try to understand in much more detail what's happening there. And these two tools, depending on whom I'm working with, also help me iterate the problem statement. So every time I'm trying to get more and more information and really get closer and closer to the exact problem statement that we really want to work on. So it's a combination of, say, these three tools, or just one of them, depending on how much time you have or how much energy or how much information is present with the team that wants to do this. Does that help? Yeah.
So the SWOT analysis is for the business context?
Yes.
And the empathy map for the user emotions or like user pain points?
Yes, exactly.
And the 4W?
So the W4 is for the problem statement itself.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
So you get this problem statement, and again, once I have this problem statement and I have the business context information, I can put them together and ask a lot of questions to say, hey, does this problem statement relate to this context at all? Are we, still swimming in the same lake when it comes to these two things, or is there some other information that we need to know? Will this give us some more information? Similarly, with the empathy map. So the empathy map is all about you're asking what are the things that your potential user says, thinks, feels, and does. So you are putting yourself in the shoes of your end user, client, or customer and trying to look at the world through their eyes. And this helps you just understand what the user is going through in a deeper sense. And you can really extend that by doing a full-blown user journey map and really mapping all the touch points that the user goes through. What is the customer feeling when he or she is going through this? What are they thinking? What opportunities do we see, etc. So these are just three basic perspectives through which you can view the problem. So there could be other perspectives also. You can also say, oh, let's look at problem complexity. So how complex is a problem, or how simplistic is it? So there are other frameworks you can use for that. So for example, there's a framework called the Cuneiform framework. Just shared here in the chat. I think it's Irish or Welsh. I'm not sure. It's pronounced Cuneiform, and it's a framework to understand problem complexity. So using that framework, you can say in which level of complexity does my problem lie, and how can I start approaching it if it is at a certain complexity. Any other questions on that note?
Yes, I have a question because I'm curious. When you are doing user customer research, do you use a mix of methods, or you choose only one tool and fully focus on that? Yeah, what's the approach that you were using?
So it's a mix of things. So there are times when, say, a client or a team has already done some research, and they say, "Look, we've gone through our user research phase, and this is what we have." And then we can dig into that and start getting insights from that. And if I have further questions, if I want to still touch base with some of them or understand the topic a little bit deeper, I'll go ahead and do that. There are instances where there is no user research available. So then you have to start from scratch and see, depending on the time, the energy, what is the overall big picture. Depending on that, we take a call on saying, how much user research do we do? How much, how much you're really talking to people. And then there are also instances where someone is like, "Look, we know everything. We really want to just go run this sprint." Then just to double check, I'll still do a problem framing. Because sometimes what the team believes, they're very close to everything that they're doing, that sometimes it's possible that they haven't identified the right problem. So me coming from a completely new perspective without knowing anything is very helpful. And it helps to align everyone and say, "Look, let's be double sure that this is the problem we're all going to work on before we start the journey." Okay? So those are 3 possible scenarios.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on problem framing at what we saw just now? How do you try to understand the user, business, or problem perspective? What have you tried till now? What has worked? What hasn't worked? I'm also curious to hear that.
For me, the persona, and depend on the persona, the problems they are looking for, and broadly, as you said, the customer journey, because each persona have their own customer journey.
Yeah. Okay.
Depend on the business problem, what personas they are looking for. We can't satisfy 100% of the user, but
True.
broadly, business is looking for a particular kind of personas. For example, when we want to look a communication device for elderly people, we can say a kind of personas for elderly is, in terms of technology, active persona, passive persona, and Lagarde's persona. So it depend on the business what kind of persona they are targeting, and depend on that context will look at the problem areas. For example, for the Lagarde's user, adoption of the technology is a problem area instead of for the primary for the active users. So it's all depend on the context of that.
Nice, very nice. And do you go and validate those personas also, Sachin? Or
yeah, actually, we have done these exercises in our company, and we have done the user research first, and then from the user research we have created the personas.
Okay.
And after doing that, we created our design sprint and we created our customer journey. And on that customer journey, we come out the problem areas, and from that we did the design sprint. That's how we.
Perfect. Wonderful. So Yeah.
Sorry, I got a question for Sachin because like I also work with personas, like I'm studying something similar. So yeah, I have to create a lot of personas. And I wanted to ask you, Sachin, do you like start out first with a persona that you create based on your assumptions of who your target group might be and what their values, their needs, their pains are, or you just create it after you interview them and
So we generally don't do the proto personas, depend on the context, and majorly with the user research we created the personas, not the proto personas. Again, it's a majorly assumptions for us, but for the exercise sake we majorly worked on the kind of research first and then created the personas from that. Abhinav is also a part of my team. Abhinav, if you want to add anything in this, if you are there, then you can add.
Hi, Sachin. Hi, Roxanne. Tell me.
Yeah. Okay. Does this answer your question?
Yeah. I was just curious, and it definitely
But
answers
yes,
my question. Thank
yeah,
you.
but yes, we can do the proto personas at the same time, but it's all depend on how relevant context is it. But majorly the user research first and then doing the personas after that.
At the end of the day, I think it's all about assumptions and validation, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can create first assumptions about personas, first assumptions about problems, first assumptions about, say, the user or the business context, and then you can go validate it. And that's your sort of iterative approach. And people do different things based on this. So sometimes they have the resources to do full-blown user research. There's also the school of thought, which talks about, oh, I don't need any user research at all. My design sprint is my user research.
Agree.
So there are people who say, I'm just going directly into the sprint. I know roughly this is what I want to get out. And the results are going to be equivalent to me doing, I don't know, 2 weeks of user research.
The problem people like us who are into the UX always think of the personas, customer journey. Will they be? That's the whole problem with us.
That's a good problem. I mean, we need you and your problems. Great.
Yeah. One way to, yep. I think that one way to look at it is at times is that making a persona might be an overhead at times because it dilutes the problem statement at times. So it might be good to look at the data and then dwell onto the problem area a bit and then look at the persona, because personas can be limiting at times.
Yep. Yeah, there's this whole debate on should you use personas or not, or how useful are personas really, because you're just going and constructing something, and how close to reality is it? There's so many debates on that, but that's a very good point you made there.
Sure.
Okay, any questions about the other methods that we looked at when it comes to problem framing? Because I also feel you can create your own method to do this. This is not really rocket science. So you're really trying to narrow down which problem it is that you want to try and solve before jumping into the sprints. So all of the other things that you need to prepare for around this would be having access to some of that research, if it is done or not, so that you can reference back to it if it's needed. Getting access to the right stakeholders, to people you can talk to, and also having an idea of where you want to land on that solution space. Sometimes it may not be really clear, but sometimes it could also be the question between, oh, do we really want an app? Or do we just want to land on the side of making better websites? This could also be a question that you talk about before going into the sprints. Yeah, these are some of the other things. Anyone else? Has any one of you already run a sprint and you want to share how you prepared before getting into that? Maybe Katharina, I thought you said you'd run a sprint, if I remember. Or... Someone else?
Yeah, so I can give you an answer on the question regarding our approach. So we have built up some teams which we called customer intelligence teams.
Okay.
So this is a team with customers where we introduce our customers, but also prospects, and present to them our ideas. And by this, we receive quite quickly first feedback whether the idea is valid to our customer, has a certain value. And afterwards, we go ahead with first screens, first scribbles, prototypes, and iterate this process with these customers. And at the end, we receive, let's say, one thesis that we follow with UX, UI, and afterwards we develop it. And then we see the result in the analytics figures. So and then we see whether the thesis that we had at the beginning is true.
Okay, wonderful. That's a really nice process. So you almost have like a board of customers whom you can refer to and say, look, tell us if this is going in the right direction.
Yes. So in our case, we started with this some years ago. We have an own UX lab in the bank. So we are a bank with 50,000 employees. So this is something where you can spend some efforts in. And yes, this works quite well. So we have a kind of panel of customers which we can access before the COVID crisis in person. And now it's a pure digital panel.
That's great. That's really nice and very smart of you to have done that, because then you can keep going to this bunch of people and say, look, tell us if this works for you or not. Great. Thanks for sharing, Thomas. Very nice of you. And that gives us a chance to welcome Sabrina. Hey, Sabrina, thank you for joining. Thanks a lot for taking precious time. How are you? How are things in Stuttgart?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. So everything's working well here, and I'm fully into design sprints. So ask me anything. No, I'm really happy. And I want to thank you for your engagement. It's great. I really want to support that. And I see that here are many people who also want to combine learning about design sprint and supporting India. So that's really that's wonderful to see.
Thank you. No, we're talking about all things problem framing and all things before the sprint. So we were just talking about, what are the things you need to do and prepare for before, kickstarting a sprint. So what is your process? What do you do? Maybe that's one of the first questions to ask you.
Okay, so if you give me, I didn't prepare anything, but I have a canvas.
I can make you co-host and you can.
Yeah, so I can show you my canvas and I can also give you the link to the canvas. Just a second. I need to open that. So this canvas, which I created, was inspired by a canvas from Angie Studio. Who is knowing Angie Studio?
No.
They are in Den Haag.
Den Haag, okay. No.
Yeah, so they did something, I think 2 years ago. So and I just elaborated that further because I really like, and I'm working with canvases. So there are many really helpful canvases, and it's like to not forget anything, and it's just to have everything in one canvas. And I use let me show you the English version. Okay.
I think this is the best part. Like, we go and create these tools, and it really makes things more effective and efficient for us.
Yeah, so I hope so. So for me, it works. And so this is This is the canvas. And let's say there's everything which for me is relevant to start. So there are also other kinds of, you can do customer journey, you can do all kinds of mappings and stakeholder mappings. But let's say what in the core, what you need to figure out is the challenge. So, because sometimes I think maybe you talked about that already, that there's something behind the challenge, which the client just talks about. Then we already prepare how might we questions and sprint questions and the 2-year goal. And that's also sometimes I'm also using, I'm giving trainings and do sometimes also shorter versions, but then I just give them the input. So for example, sprint questions and 2-year goals are typically something which I give as a, so it's already done. So I tell them, okay, this is, just imagine the decider, or you already have this 2-year goal. So then it's really important, these things. And then also the user, because you have different kinds of users, and sometimes only in the map you identify who you need to ask in the end, because it's not yet clear. Or sometimes you identify also different kinds of users, user target groups, which are maybe one target group, but you have different target groups in that. So this is already important to identify beforehand. Let's say normally in a normal design sprint for me, I know who is the user, and I already can start preparing the interviews, because sometimes it gets difficult to get the dates, the appointments. Then lightning demos, also very important. But then it might be that in the map you choose another focus, so you need to make to redo the lightning demos. But still, it's good to already start thinking about what could be inspiration, and then who is in the sprint team. And this is, let's say, I do that with either my team. Sometimes I have someone in the client in the client team. I have support, so then it's already somebody from the team. But let's say in the end, you can also do that with an interview with a decider. So having an interview with a decider, and you can, let's say, fill out most of the stuff and then start your research. Because for all that, I do research, qualitative or quantitative research. And I'm more and more, I'm doing interviews. So I really like doing interviews. And then what is also important, managing expectations. There, let's say you need to dig a bit deeper, because it's important to have that from each person.
Yes. Yeah.
And after, so there, for example, I do a survey in the beginning. And after the sprint, it's also very important, because if you know that there is no real support or no budget, or it's difficult to get the budget, then it might be that a design sprint is not relevant enough, or shouldn't be done. Or maybe it should be just a workshop, a smaller workshop.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. Just to connect with what we spoke about before you joined us, we saw that understanding the user was important. So you're highlighting the user, the business context, which is with the challenge and the how might we questions, and the sprint questions and the goals, and also the expectations, and also the problem. So I think you're already capturing the problem statements with the how might we there, right? And with that whole bunch of sprint questions, how might we's, and 2-year goal, it all goes in that direction of, okay, what do we really want to sprint on? Really?
Yeah. And I'm doing much more research, but let's say this is to capture everything. And usually I have, then the board will be full.
Perfect.
And if you like, I can give you I just copy and paste that here.
Oh yeah,
it's here in the chat.
Thank you. That's really wonderful. And what could go wrong in this phase? I think that's one of the things that, you know, it's very difficult to anticipate. Or are there any stories where you have had like, oh, we did everything, but still something didn't work in spite of doing problem framing correct?
Maybe one thing. So actually I'm doing, I was supposed to do a sprint. We did the whole preparation. But now it's on ice, or it's not on ice, but it's we need to figure out the next date because it got postponed. Okay. And what I found out, and I can tell you, it's not really 100% clear for me, but the big problem here, and therefore design sprint is very good to do. There are two, let's say, teams which are not working really well together, but they need to. And one team needs the other more than the other team needs them. Exactly. And so the team who needs the others, they want to do it, but the others don't see, let's say, the relevance. So this is where I try to give them some prompts and some questions and something to, because they already agreed on everything. So it was already planned, but then someone got sick and it got postponed. But now, let's say, the momentum is a bit down. So this is, let's say, a struggle right now. But yeah, usually what can go wrong? What can go wrong? Good question. So I think you have all the possibilities here to avoid that something is going wrong. It's never working 100%, that's clear. But I think, so when I do this, I feel prepared. And then I think it's nothing is going really wrong. So maybe I need to put a bit effort in that. And there are people there's always someone who is a bit skeptical. Yeah. But therefore, it's really important to manage the expectation. That's where I think
that's a very useful field that you have there in the canvas, because I've also had conversations with teams and clients, and they realize sometimes that, you know what, this is not the problem we should be working on. And they go back again and say, okay, you know what, we found the problem, but it's not the right one.
Yeah, sometimes, so I try always to do an LDJ or something, problem framing workshop beforehand. So I mix some of problem framing LDJ stuff which is there around, and I put that together just to see what is if there is what is the real problem behind that. So there I don't have a real a recipe, but I used elements from the mini problem framing from the Design Sprint Academy, which I think they posted already 3 years ago, something like that. So it's cool.
Yeah, the W4 method, right? Like the 4 quadrants. Who has the problem? Where is it happening? Is that the one?
No, that's different. So I can have a look and I share the link for this article with you. It is more about what is the business focus. So it's like, it starts a bit like with a lightning decision jam. Yeah. So you look into what is your problem, but also what is the business, what does the business need?
Okay. So go more deeper into the business context and understand what the needs there are.
And what is already, what solutions there are already, what did you do beforehand, what worked, what didn't work. But being concrete, what I liked is that you sort all the answers in a axis from broad or let's say more general to, or abstract to concrete. So that you can see also, okay, how does that talk directly to a specific, let's say, problem in the company, so that there is, like, for example, we have we don't have the support, but from whom you don't have the support, so that it's already clear articulated. So because then you are able also to look behind the curtain. Maybe there is a specific person who can challenge the outcome of a design sprint. So I think this is a good, for me, a pragmatic approach. It takes like 2 hours, and but when I give you this link, I will look for it. It's not exactly what I do, because usually I don't do the personas. I don't like personas in a design sprint.
But that's fine. Like, we all have our own flavors and you know, things that we like or things that we do or don't do, and that's what makes it more exciting also. But why don't I throw now the room open for our audience? Any questions for Sabrina? It could be about the pre-sprint phase, or even if you're interested in knowing something about the sprint, that's also cool.
Yeah, I'm open to to answer all questions. So I found the article.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Oh, no, this is not the article.
Okay.
It looks different. It looks different than before. Maybe they changed.
Okay, I haven't seen it, so I wouldn't know.
No, it's the right one.
Okay. So there you go, people. That's another approach. And this is something that the Design Sprint Academy uses. So they try to understand the business context in a more deeper sense, and they have a sequence of activities that they do that really drills it down. So I would say ultimately it's up to each individual to put their own problem framing process together, because there's no one magic bullet that works for everyone. You try things out, learn from it, and see what suits you. And the canvas that you've made, Sabrina, is awesome, super helpful. You see everything at one go, bam. I think.
Yeah, it's let's say it's basic, and there are much more which you can do around that. And the Design Sprint Academy is very focused on this pre-phase, on the problem framing. And I would just so for me, I understand it like that, because they are so focused on that and the others not. But they are working with big corporate clients. And I think if you are in a corporate setup, then you have a lot of these politics and you know, a lot of things going on. And
Very
sometimes much. when then a team is just asking you for a design sprint, it might be that they want to just do something for themselves, but they have a bigger context. And I think there it really makes sense.
Absolutely. Because
Put
there
a
are too
lot
many
of
moving
effort
parts
in that.
there, right? And things are always changing. Like what happens with a corporate client is you do something today, come back tomorrow, everything has changed again. So you're absolutely
exactly.
Right. Maybe you have a question, Carolyn? Go for it.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for all the information. Just wanted to ask, because we're talking about personas, why don't you like personas? Why don't you like using them in a design thinking process?
So it's not that I don't like personas. I don't like them in a design sprint. So because I think it's not necessary. We talk to real people, so we don't have. I never use that because it's not really needed. We have the expert interviews where we have maybe also these user research. And then we have the user research as a summary, but it's not really, there we always talk about real people or about observations. And so it's just, I never needed it, but I use it for, let's say, if we want to make something more strategic about branding or customer related, where you need to focus on one or two customers. So, but let's say in a design sprint, a normal design sprint, it's not needed. I just said that because in this link I gave you, they are doing a persona, or that's what I don't know if this is still the same article, but I guess, and they are doing this proto persona, and I just skipped that because for me it was, I didn't need that. Because I'm doing research. Sometimes I really talk to real to these users. where I think these will be the right users. It might be different than in the end, but I get, I get a bit into the topic. So
thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely.
Do you like personas?
I'm not sure because in my case, I'm working in branding right now, and I feel like we don't validate them enough. And that's why I don't really trust them in most cases. But that's not the problem of the persona, but the problem of how we do it.
Yeah, that's my problem too, Carolyn. Where you have a lot of steps, but the validation step doesn't happen. Then it just ends up being something you constructed out of air. That's always a risk there.
Yeah, true.
So, Sachin, do you have a question?
Yeah. Sabrina, just want to understand, for example, in a big corporate, if you want to sell design sprint to the product managers who never saw the design sprint, right? They always say, this is the product, this is the feature, we want to build it. Designer will come with some designs and give it to them. So how do we convince them that's how, let's do in this way, and that the design sprint way? So how you generally convince your client or somebody who do generally typical UX process, how do you start, or how do you sell these sprints to these type of people? If you can
I would think about what is that person. I would always think of people. So then we can again have the persona, but I wouldn't use a persona here as well. I would think of the person who has a problem. So usually a product manager has the problem that he has a project, a long project, and he has a team, and he needs to align the team, and he needs to be faster. I think that's always the problem. So I think it's less about giving him a good, let's say, examples, or just presenting him the design sprint, but it's more like listening, what are your problems, and then talking about how a design sprint can solve his problem without saying, oh, here's this new method, take this. But it's more like listening to what are his real needs and pains, and then offering him a solution. And it might be a good idea not to talk about the design sprint, but maybe talk about an alignment workshop, and then maybe just using the LDJ to make a 1 hour workshop. So let's try that, and let's meet an hour, because they always meet for hours. So just take one of their meetings and make an LDJ. And when then you have like this aha moment, then you can continue.
Pitch into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I can only second that because from my experience also, sometimes people get very scared when you mention a new term like the sprints, and it's easier to keep it more human, where you say, let's try a small experiment. Let's just work on how to do better experiments, or let's work on how to get everyone on the same page. So that's a much easier entry point rather than, new method, and this is how you should do it. That's always tricky. And I just want to share 2 links that I found interesting. So Robert and Friso had written about this also. So this there might be some useful stuff in there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Rakesh.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Julia, you look like you have a question.
Hi, Sabrina. I have a question regarding your canvas. So is this something you kind of tick off with the management beforehand, or is it something you do a workshop with? So you have it in a Miro or mural board, and then you do a workshop where you actually work on that canvas, or do exercises that you then basically use to populate that canvas? It's hard to imagine how you work with it.
Let's say I work with it with my team. So usually I have a co-facilitator and a designer when I'm really when I go to a company as an external. Then I bring a co-facilitator and I bring a designer. Very often it also happens that there's already, let's say, design sprint knowledge or appetite to try it, so that there are people in the team who want to partner up. So then I have maybe a co-facilitator from the team. But let's say the people who are responsible for preparing the design sprint, these are the people who fill out the canvas. Or I do that myself, but let's say I use it plus then with the team when I have the decider call, when I talk to the decider. So I ask all these questions, and it's nice just not to forget about anything, because if you are talking, then 1 hour is so fast, it's running, the time is running, and then maybe you forget about asking what will happen after the sprint. So what are your plans? And if you hear like, oh, we don't know, so maybe nothing, then you can already request, or if they also, what happened that they are looking for, or I write who will be in the team, and then they have no decider. I talk to the decider, but sometimes it's maybe not a real decider, it's just someone from the team. And then I hear that they have like another decider, their team lead, but this team lead won't be involved in the design sprint. So there you can already think about at least involving this person a bit, so for some hours. But if there's no commitment, and if you hear this, but we don't know, they have no time, then you already see that there is a problem. So it's more like this preparation, but I don't use it for making a real workshop. And when I do an LDJ or problem framing or whatever beforehand, like a short workshop from 1 or maximum 2 hours, then I use another canvas. So then I don't use this one. This is more for me.
And then you derive the problem framing from that pre-conversation or pre-workshop. Is that correct? So you're proposing something like a problem statement before you go into the sprint?
Yes, yes. Okay. And I try to figure that out there, and I still can. So I try to map out everything there, and then I see where is still something missing. For example, I don't know the expectations from some people, or the problem framing is not yet clear. Then I can still go back to them and ask again. And it's not that I provide the problem, the challenge. They need to provide it, but I can request it, or maybe. Let's say with the experience, you realize that maybe sometimes when you hear a problem statement or a challenge statement, it's superficious. And there maybe there is something behind it, but I just put it there, and then I just gather all the information. And I also do research. I do research with maybe experts, or I propose expert. I ask also who might be expert, but the experts I put there also in the sprint team. So what might be experts, and and then I see, let's say, where are maybe blind areas or problems still for the design sprint. But it's more like it should be filled, and then I feel prepared. So it's also to feel prepared for the sprint, to feel good.
Mute. I think it's also a personal choice, right? You can decide whether you want to keep that, or is it a shared document together with the client. That's
not with I don't share that with a client. Only if there's someone who is, let's say, who helps me.
Okay.
If there's especially someone, and I can only give you the advice to look for someone. That's nice to already have like a buddy in the team, in the client team.
Very cool. Okay, hope that answered your question, Julia. Any other, maybe one last question before you run, Sabrina?
Yeah, I have another appointment.
Okay.
Meeting.
Thomas, do you have a question for Sabrina?
Yes, I have a quick question. So when you think of an agile team of working like which is working on software development, you have a Scrum Master, business experts, developers, UX colleagues. Who should be the initiator of, for example, a design sprint? So is it the Scrum Master, or shall it be a business expert or the product owner? So who is saying, okay, let's try out design sprint and is initiating it and running through the process?
I would say initiator can be everyone. Mm-hmm. I think the crucial point is who is the decider here in the team. Because you want to, you have a problem, you want to have a solution, you test it, but then what do you do with the solution? Then maybe you change a process. But changing a process takes time, takes money, effort, and people need to change something. So there you need really buy-in from when you are in a corporate setup from the, let's say from the executive or C level or from the board, or I don't know, depending on the company. But I think there this is something you need to make clear. And initiating, I think everyone who, also if you are, let's say, just give the idea to another team, that's also, I think, very relevant.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, I'm really sorry, but I need to run.
I think that was it. We are also closing. So thank you, Sabrina. Very, very nice to have had you. Thanks a lot for joining. And
thanks for inviting me.
Bye. So with that, I think it's also a wrap for us. People, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Miro board. We'll meet again same time next week. And it's going to be all about the understand session of the sprint. We'll look at all the exercises. We'll also have a special guest, just like Sabrina, to share thoughts and opinions. So if you're joining, please feel free to do that. And yeah, happy weekend, everyone. Very nice to have had you. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you so much, Rakesh.
Anytime.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.